At 3 in the morning in December 1938, an avalanche picked up the top 2 floors of a workers' dormitory in a Japanese gorge. The men were still asleep inside it. It threw the building 2,000 feet across the valley, about 600 meters. 84 people died, and nobody outside that gorge heard about it for days because there was no road in and no road out. I know how that sounds, but it happened, and the thing that made it possible is the same thing that kept it quiet. Japan has a word for this kind of place. Hikkyo. It means an unexplored region, and the country uses it for the parts of itself it never finished. Hold on to that word, because by number 1, it stops being about geography. On this list, there's a national highway that simply stops, and 15 people who have been under a mountain since 1984 and are still listed as missing. 13 towns hidden deep in the mountains of Japan, and in every one of them, the isolation is not the scenery, it is the reason. Number 13. I opened this video on that dormitory, so now you get the rest of it, and one honest note comes first. This was never a town the way the other 12 are. It was a camp built for one job, but hundreds of men live down there all year, and nowhere else in Japan has anyone tried that, so I am counting it. The Kurobe Gorge cuts through the northern Alps in Tokuyama, and in the 1930s there was no road into it. Workers walked in along a cliff path about 20 inches wide, 50 centimeters. What came down that night was a hanadare. That is the Japanese word for a dry powder avalanche, and it does not bury you. It hits you with air at over 120 miles an hour, about 200 kilometers an hour, and the pressure alone takes a building apart. And this is where it stops being an ordinary disaster. There was almost no wreckage scattered along the flight path. That is how researchers worked out the building had not broken up in the air. It went across whole with the men inside it. I have read that conclusion several times and it still will not sit properly in my head. Around 39 of those 84 men were Korean laborers. They were digging a tunnel where the rock at the face measured 320 degrees Fahrenheit, about 160 degrees Celsius, hot enough that dynamite went off on its own before anyone lit it. Number 12 has no death toll for you. What it has is a road that closes for 7 months a year and 6 statues that explain what the village used to do about it. Number 12. Look at a map of Japan's prefectural borders. There is exactly one place you cannot drive across. You can walk it. You never have been able to drive it. That border belongs to Hinoemata in the mountains of Fukushima, boxed in on 3 sides by peaks. The village on the other side is close enough to walk to in a day. To drive there, you go 78 miles around, about 125 kilometers, through a different prefecture. And the road west closes in November and does not open again until June. Hold on to that road. Japan is a country that finishes things, and twice more on this list you are going to meet a road it did not. So ask the practical question, what do you eat up there? You cannot grow rice at that altitude, not with snow on the ground for half the year. And the village histories are honest about what that meant, in a way most places are not. They kept a record of mabiki. The word means thinning out, the way you thin a row of seedlings so the rest survives, and it was applied to infants. There are 6 Jizo statues in the village. Jizo are the small stone guardians that watch over travelers and children. Ask locally what those 6 are for, and you will be told they are the memorial for the children who were thinned. Nobody has dug that out of a document. It is what the village says about its own statues, and that is the only place it comes from. But a place that keeps a memorial is telling you something either way. Number 11 never got to decide anything together because the mountain came across the river to get them. Number 11. It is the 29th of June, 1961, and it has been raining on southern Nagano for a week. The northeast face of Mount Onishi, let's go. This was not a slip. A slab about 1,500 feet high and 50 feet thick, 450 meters by 15, comes down into the Koshibu River. And it does not stop at the river. It crosses it, rides over the flood bank on the far side, and lands on the hamlet, standing on it. 42 people died. 39 houses went, along with the fields and the village branch school. Now here is what the survivors did with that ground. and keep hold of it because it happens twice more. They went and planted it. Since 1967, the village has put about 3,000 cherry trees on top of the debris field and turned the place where their neighbors are buried into a park. And Oshika is still hard to reach, in a way that is strange for a rich country. Route 152, the national highway through the village, has 2 passes on it that were never actually built, so the road just ends. That is the second one, and there's another coming. If this is the kind of hidden Japan you want more of, go ahead and subscribe because it is the only thing this channel digs into. Number 10 was not cut off by its mountains. It was cut off by people who knew what was coming and said nothing. Number 10. 4 days after the tsunami, the radiation monitor outside the village hall in Iitate read 44.7 microsieverts per hour. Iitate is a highland farming village 24 miles inland from the Fukushima Daiichi plant, about 39 kilometers, which put it outside the 12-mile evacuation ring and outside the 19-mile ring drawn after that. The plume was not aware of the rings. It went northwest and settled on Iitate. Japan had a system for exactly this called SPEEDY, which models where a release will travel. It ran, and its forecasts showed the plume coming down on this village. Central government held the output. It did not go to the village, and it did not go to the public, and the commissions that went back over that decision could not find a justification for it. The evacuation order came on the 22nd of April, 42 days after that reading. 6,200 people lived in Iitate before it. By 2020, it was 1,300. One of the men who stayed is called Nobuyoshi Ito. He walks the village in a vest of radiation detectors, and what he does with them is measure the food. He handed a journalist a mushroom picked locally, and a lab read it at 88,000 becquerels per kilogram. The legal limit for food in Japan is 100, so that is 900 times over out of the ground this decade. And nobody there can burn their own firewood either, because a village surrounded by forest has to buy its heat in. Number 9 also had a government it could not trust. It dealt with the problem differently, and it has been living with that decision for 400 years. Number 9. Picture a mountainside in southern Nagano so steep that the slope hits 38 degrees, with houses stacked up the incline and their fields cut into terraces around them. 93 people live in Shimaguri now. This valley was run by the Tokuyama clan, and their lord taxed the people in it past what they could carry. He died in 1615, and the year after that, the valley moved. They did it properly first. They found a temple abbot willing to carry a petition out of the mountains, and it worked. And in 1618, the clan was stripped of its domain. Then somebody came for the abbot and left him for dead. And that was the end of the paperwork. The villagers went up to Wada Castle and wiped the family out, and 4 years later they killed the dead lord's younger brother on the road home. Then an epidemic came through the valley. You and I would call that a bad year. The villagers decided it was the clan coming back for them, so they took the men they had murdered, enshrined them as gods at the local shrine, and wrote a rite for them into the winter festival. That festival is still running, and locally it has its own name. Shiryo Matsuri, the Festival of the Dead Spirits. The masks of the lords are still danced every winter by the descendants of the people who killed them. The uprising and the killings are in the record. The curse is what the villagers decided an epidemic meant, which is a different kind of fact, but it is the one still moving. Number 8 is where I break my own rules on purpose, and I will say so before you start wondering what happened to this video. Number 8. So far this list has been people the mountains killed. This one is not. Let me say that out loud now, so the change of gear does not read as a mistake. Hijiori is a hot spring settlement in Yamagata that sits inside a volcanic caldera. It is a bowl, and you come down into it. It is also a weather service station, which is why this number is hard data and not local bragging. The record snow depth at Hijiori is 14.5 feet, about 4.5 meters on one day in February 2018. That is depth on the ground, not snowfall over a season. Most towns in that band spend the winter quietly frightened of it. Hijiori is selling tickets on it. Every year the village runs a sweepstake where you guess the maximum depth, and a deal where the deeper the snow gets, the cheaper your room gets, until past a certain point you stay for nothing. In 2018, it paid out. And I do like it. A town making money off the thing trying to bury it is a good joke, and better still because they're telling it. But I should say what actually kills people in that snow band. It is roofs. You clear the roof or you lose the house, so people go up with shovels and they fall, or the load lets go on top of them. In that same February, across Japan, 18 people died that way. So the guessing game is not a game. It is a town keeping its humor about a number that decides how many neighbors go up a ladder. Number 7 had a number like that too in 1889, and it decided the town could not stay. Number 7. In a single month in 1889, 2,691 people walked out of this village and never came back. Here is what made them go. It is August in the key mountains of Nara, and it has been raining for 3 days and 3 nights. Over 1,000 slope failures come off those mountains. Some land in the rivers and plug them, so the valleys fill with water that has nowhere to go. Then the plugs give way, one after another, onto everything below. 168 people died, and around 3,000 were left with nothing to go back to. And then Totsukawa did something no other village in Japan has done at that scale. In October of that same year, about 600 households walked out of the mountains, got on ships, and went to Hokkaido, 900 miles away, about 1,500 kilometers in the season before winter. They cleared ground, built a town, and named it Totsukawa, which means New Totsukawa. And the two towns are still in contact, and not in some vague sentimental way either. They run formal sister town exchanges 137 years after the split. Totsukawa itself is still the largest village in Japan by area. It holds 1,300 people, and it has no railway. Number 6 was not allowed home either. Nobody in it was, and there was no landslide involved. Number 6. What do you build for a village that is not there anymore? In the mountains of Gifu, on a piece of high ground, somebody answered that with a stone plaza with a map cut into it. The map is labeled, which family lived in which house, street by street, in the right positions. You are standing above the village. It is underneath the water in front of you. Tokuyama had 1,583 people across 8 hamlets. The village was formally abolished in 1987, so it stopped existing as a place with a name 21 years before the water arrived. 2 things about Tokuyama have stayed with me. The first is a hamlet called Monyu. It sat high enough that the water never reached it, and that is exactly what ruined it because the road to it ran along the valley floor, and the valley floor is now the lake bed. So, the one part of Tokuyama that was not drowned became the only part nobody can drive to. Former residents still walk in 5 miles each way, about 8 kilometers. The second is that after all of it, the reporting on this dam says not one drop of its water has been used. Think about the cherry trees planted on the dead at Oshika, and this stone map above the water, naming whose house was whose. Keep watching what these places do with ground they cannot get back, because it comes together at number 1. Number 5 did not lose its village. It decided a very long time ago that the mountain above it was hell, and then the mountain went and proved it. Number 5, a woman in white, blindfolded, is being walked across a bridge. She has been told the far bank is the next world, that crossing it is her death and her rebirth, and that this is the closest she will ever get to the mountain in front of her. Ashikaraji sits at the foot of Mount Tate in Toyama, and this village did not think of that mountain as scenery. It thought of it as a map of the afterlife, and it was not being poetic. Below the pass is a place called Jigokudani, Hell Valley, an active field of sulfur vents, and the village's painted scrolls laid the Buddhist hells over that real terrain with the real place names on them. Women were not permitted past the village, so Ashikaraji built them the cloth bridge right instead, which is the woman in white I just described. They still run it every 3 years. Now the mountain itself. It is the 4th of May, 1935. A party is coming down on skis after a week trapped in a hut by a blizzard. The lead guide is a young man called Saeki Toyotaro. He drops through the snow into a hole above one of the vents, and he does not come back up. Saeki Sosaku is 39 from Ashikaraji. He throws off his pack and goes in after him. He gets Toyotaro's body up and out. Then he goes down. The whole thing took about 7 seconds because what is at the bottom of that hole is hydrogen sulfide and you do not get a second breath. The others tied towels over their faces as improvised gas masks and had Sosaku out 4 minutes later. His heart had already stopped. There was one line in the research that made me stop and read it twice, and this is it. Before Sosaku left home that week, he gave his youngest child one instruction. Do not forget to water the potted plants, and if I could only stand in one of these 13 places, it would be this one, which is a strange thing to say about a village named after hell. Jigokudani itself has been closed to human beings since 2011. The gas got past what a person can survive, so the walkways are sealed, and tourists photograph hell from a distance. Number 4 is a village that watched 14 of its houses go underwater and then chose to live where it has to look at them. Number 4. In October 2004, a Japanese village issued an order that almost no village ever has to issue. Not evacuate the buildings. Evacuate the village. All of it. By AIR, it is the 23rd, 6 minutes to 6 in the evening, and the earthquake hits right underneath the mountains of Niigata. In Yamakoshi, the slopes come apart. 329 separate landslides. Every road into the village is cut in the same few seconds. 5 people are dead. So, 2 days later, all 2,200 residents are lifted out by helicopter. Now the part that makes Yamakoshi different from every other disaster on this list. At a hamlet called Kogomo, one of the landslides dammed the Imo River. The water backed up and drowned 14 of the hamlet's 28 houses. They were not damaged. They were submerged. Nobody took them out. They are still there, roofs breaking the surface 22 years later. And of the 25 households from Kogomo, 16 came back and rebuilt on the ridge directly above. So those families now live looking down at their own houses under the water. Every morning. On purpose. I have turned that over for a while, and I still cannot decide whether it is the saddest thing on this list or the strongest. Number 3 is not fighting water or the mountain. It is losing to something alive, and the state has already sent soldiers. Number 3, a kindergarten principal in Akita walks the grounds at first light, setting off firecrackers and playing recordings of human voices out of a radio, so the school sounds like a place where people still are. That is a real routine, done every morning, and the reason for it is bears. Ani is a mountain district in Kita and the home of the Matagi, the winter bear hunters, who worked with Akita dogs and killed bears at close range with a knife. Across Japan, 13 people were killed by bears in a single year and around 230 injured, which is the worst on record. And Akita took the worst of it. In November of 2025, the Ministry of Defense signed an agreement with the prefecture, and the next day ground troops deployed, setting baited traps and handling carcasses. The United States Embassy issued a bear warning to Americans in Japan, and it is still going this year. And most people get the next part backwards, which is exactly why the entry belongs on a list about isolation. The bears did not invade. The people left. Empty houses stopped being watched. Persimmon and chestnut trees that nobody harvests anymore stand full of fruit at the edge of every hamlet. And around Mount Moriyoshi, the Matagi are down from about 120 to roughly 20, mostly old men. So the pressure that kept the forest on its own side of the line is simply on. Which runs the other way from everything else in this video. Everywhere else, something arrived, whether it was a wall of snow or a wave of mud or a reservoir. Here, nothing arrived. The place just got quiet enough that the forest stopped noticing there had ever been a line. Number 2 is where the arithmetic stops. 15 people went under a mountain in Nagano and have never come out. Every year, the village stops what it is doing at 8:45 in the morning. Number 2, 14th of September, 1984, 48 minutes past 8 in the morning. The earthquake is barely a mile down, about 2 kilometers, which is almost at the surface, and the shaking is strong enough to throw rocks and timber into the air. 2 things happen at once, and they need to be kept apart. In the village itself, at Matsukoshi, A terrace of ground lets go under the building standing on it and drops part of an inn and a length of road onto a concrete plant at the bottom of the slope. 13 forestry and factory workers are killed. The owner of that inn rode a tatami mat down, came off it at the bottom, and climbed out of a cliff face that had not existed 20 seconds earlier. And on the mountain above, the south face of Otaki sheared off. 4.5 million cubic yards of rock and earth, 3.5 million cubic meters, coming down the valley at about 60 miles an hour. It fills more than 2 miles of that valley under 160 feet of debris, about 50 meters. 15 people were in the way. A family of 4 at a hot spring building. 5 people out picking mushrooms. 5 in a car. 1 more further down. They were never found, not one of them. The Japanese casualty tables from that earthquake still do not say 29 dead. They say 14 dead and 15 missing, and they have said that for 42 years, because officially those people are still up there and nobody has finished looking. So here is what Otaki does about it. Every 14th of September, at 8:45 in the morning, the emergency siren goes off across the whole village and everybody stops. Then, the same morning, they run a full evacuation drill. They grieve and they rehearse in the same hour once a year. And it is the drill I cannot leave alone, not the siren. Those people know better than anybody alive that the drill does not always work, because 15 of their neighbors are under the hill it points them away from. They run it anyway. Before number 1, do me one quick favor and tap the like button. I am still getting this channel off the ground, and it helps more than you would think. Number 1 is not a disaster. It is a valley where 3 villages simply stopped, and the whole record of it comes down to one conversation. Number 1. There is a stone in a forest clearing in the mountains between Nagano and Niigata with a death date on it. 3rd day of the 10th month in the old calendar, which puts it in late November. Somebody who had harvested nothing, dying exactly as the winter arrived. The valley is called Akiyama-go, 13 hamlets on the upper Nakatsu River, and it is on the list of Japan's 100 Hikkyo. That is the word I asked you to hold on to, and this is the 3rd road. The last stretch of the one that would link this valley through was not delayed. It was never built, and there is still no start date for it. Now go back to 1783, the Tenmei famine. Owakiyama is the hamlet that gave the whole valley its name, and it held 8 households. All 8 were wiped out. At Yabitsu, it was the same, everybody. At Kawakazawa, it took 9 households out of 32. 173 people died in this one valley, and we know because Suzuki Bokushi wrote it down. 50 years later, the Tenpo famine came back for the ones that were left. And this next part is why I started the video here. In 1828, in between the 2 famines, Bokushi walked into Akiyama-go himself, writing the valley down. He got as far as a hamlet called Amazaki, Sweet Sake Village, where he found 2 houses still standing, and in one of them he talked to a woman. She told him the Tenmei famine had wiped Owakiyama out completely, and then she told him her own village had come through it, and that they were not short of food. Within 10 years, the Tenpo famine killed every single person in Amazaki. Not most of them, every one, and she was almost certainly one of them. I keep going back to that conversation, and not for the reason you would expect. She was not wrong. Her village was fine, and she gave an honest answer about a place that had survived the worst thing anyone there could remember. Nobody in that room said anything foolish, and that is the part that sits badly. Now the graves. At Owakiyama, the headstones were scattered through the forest where the houses had been, and at some point people went in, gathered them, and brought them into one place. It was not the villagers. There are no villagers, and there have been none for 240 years. It was people from the other hamlets, and they keep the ground clear to this day. There were cherry trees over the buried at Oshika and a stone map at Tokuyama with the right family in the right house. And here, strangers are tending the graves of a village that ran out of anyone to grieve for it. The valley is still going, just about, but the school at Kawakazawa dropped to 1 pupil in 2016, and in March 2020, that pupil graduated, and they closed it. Every place in this video is still on a map, and that is the last thing to go. The school shuts, the road stops being repaired, the final household moves down to the valley. And the name sits there in the National Registry, so to anyone reading it from outside, the place still exists. Japan has lost over 350 hamlets that way in under a decade. But in 2022, in Fukuoka, a district called Ogochi voted to dissolve itself after a flood. 17 households took their own name off the register. Then they put their hands in their pockets and paid for a stone, had the name of the district carved into it, and stood it up on the ground where they used to live. Which puts a question in front of me that I cannot answer. That stone is not for the people who left. They know, and it is not really for me or for you. So who do you think a village leaves a gravestone for? Tell me below.